I will focus on the donor role in supporting partners in my presentation. And Marco has asked us to identify the challenges to implement country-led evaluation. And in my presentation, I will take the key issue as capacity development. It's something that is a theme of this conference as well. First, to recap what we mean by capacity. We have been discussing this, but I think there is more or less a general agreement on these different levels of capacity, which deals with individual competences, organizational, institutional contexts, and the more enabling environment for accountability and governance. We have looked at a number of studies that have discussed and analyzed evaluation capacity development, and this is part of the knowledge base, and I think the publication that Marco has edited and it's being presented here is one of the key elements in this knowledge base that we have today about what we know in supporting the capacity development in evaluation. I would like to mention also that we have done a fact-finding study within the network where we found over 80 different activities funded by donors, and we have drawn some lessons from that work together with the other things that you see here. And I will now present to you 15 emerging lessons from ECD work. And I think a very important and hard lesson that we have learned from a number of actually evaluations of capacity development programs in evaluation is that they have not been sustainable because they have not been locally owned and driven. So we really need to think about that we shall support and not import solutions. That's a very important first step. And we need to build capacity by doing it. Actually doing joint evaluation work, learning by doing. I think a country like Vietnam, for instance, has very good practical examples of how they have developed evaluation skills by on-the-job training. And trust is also a very important element of this. I think we have a practical example in this in the evaluation of the Paris Declaration first phase, where the evaluations at the country level were led by a local steering group. They were conducted with local procurement, with local consultants, and that trust actually enabled us to have a very good quality and good evaluations, which we could then draw synthesis results from because we used a common framework across countries. We also know that we need to look at supply and demand issues, and I would like to emphasize in this slide the importance of utility and benefits, and an early win is very important. You have to have something to show to policymakers. For instance, the evaluation of the health, joint evaluation of the health system in Tanzania was very important for the country in terms of defining its new health policies. So if you have something that is concrete and you can show on its importance, then you have an early win that is needed for building support. Peer-to-peer learning, in a way that's what we're doing here in this conference, and I think there is a niche here for ideas to further develop that. I would also like to emphasize number 13, which is that we should include capacity development within the various PRSPs and JASs, etc. I've come across situations where all the right things are in the PRSPs about midterm evaluations, final evaluation, also in the JASs, but finally the capacity and who should do it is not very clear. So it becomes a last-minute exercise. We scramble, we do a review, we need it because it's in the JASs, it's in the PRSP sort of obligation. If we had thought about the capacity development aspects earlier on when we developed these mutual commitments, it would have been easier to implement. And as we have been discussing, we need to move beyond the isolated individual training and take into account the domestic, broader environment of governance and supporting environment. So, some challenges and issues maybe that we can discuss in this. If we're moving beyond aid, and of course partner system must serve primarily domestic accountability purposes. At the same time, we have to recognize that donors have also accountability needs. And sometimes they might be working together, but sometimes they might be a little bit different in terms of accountability needs. So this is an issue that we need to try to square. And I think we will not always have only joint evaluations, but we will still continue with some that is more focused on the individual accountability dimension. And we need to work, as I said, with the broader issues on the enabling environment. And one issue maybe that we haven't thought enough about, it's my fourth point here, what is the effects of the current system that we're operating, as Umul mentioned. Evaluation in many countries today, at least the low-income countries, are very donor-driven. And by having such a donor-driven system, we created impacts, and maybe unintended impacts, about domestic accountability in these partner countries. So we need to take maybe a discussion on this a little bit and see how we can move forward. Here are some suggestions on things that we can do. There are many more things, of course, but I'm defining it from the perspective of the donor. And I think while we've done a number of evaluation capacity development training, and we have done various programs to support it, I think we need now also to focus a bit more on the capacity dimension in how we implement and plan evaluations as such. And we are actually now in the process of developing here and consolidating lessons into practical tips for donors or for evaluation commissioners when they are planning and implementing evaluation and thinking about the capacity dimension. So I think that might be an important avenue. And of course we need to work jointly, we need to share experiences and resources and link with various initiatives. And that's one reason I'm also here to do that. So I'm looking forward to your comments and suggestions. Thank you.